A weak girl crawled into a cowboy's barn. What she held changed everything forever. The door slammed open so hard it near split its hinges. Eli Cade did not move from his chair. He had learned long ago that a man who jumps at every sound does not last long on the frontier. He set his coffee cup down slow, reached for the rifle leaning against the wall beside him, and waited. Nothing came through the door. Wind, maybe. The storms had been bad that week, rolling in from the north with a kind of anger that felt personal. He stood, walked to the barn entrance, and looked out into the dark. That was when he heard it. Not a sound exactly, more like the absence of one, the way breathing stops when something is wrong. He held the lantern out. She was on the ground just inside the barn door, collapsed against the hay. One arm stretched out in front of her, like she had been reaching for something when she fell. Her clothes were torn at the knees, both of them, which told him she had not fallen once, but many times. Her boots were split open at the sole on the left foot. Her hair was matted with something dark at the temple that the lantern light turned copper. She was young, younger than he had expected, though he had not expected anything at all. He knelt beside her and pressed 2 fingers to her neck. The pulse was there, thin as a thread, but there. He looked at her hands. Her right hand was closed in a fist around something she was holding so tight her knuckles had gone white. He did not try to open it. A person holds something that hard in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. That thing is theirs. He left it alone. He carried her inside. Eli Cade was 34 years old and had lived alone on that piece of land for 6 years. Before that he had spent 4 years riding with a cattle outfit up through the territory, sleeping under open sky more nights than not, eating whatever could be caught or carried, speaking to other men only when work required it. He was not an unfriendly man. He was simply a man who had found that people brought complications, and complications were something he had learned to live without. He had a single-room house attached to the barn, which most people found strange when they saw it. He had built it that way deliberately. The animals were closer. The cold got in less. He did not need a reason beyond that. He laid the girl on his cot, which was the only bed in the place, and pulled the wool blanket over her. He wet a cloth and cleaned the cut at her temple. It was not deep enough to be dangerous, but it bled the way head wounds do, more than the damage warrants, dramatic and frightening in appearance. He pressed the cloth against it and held it there until the bleeding slowed. Then he sat in his chair across the room and waited for morning. She did not wake until past noon the next day. He heard her before he saw her move. A sharp intake of breath, then the sound of someone trying to be still and not quite managing it. He was at the stove when it happened. He did not turn around immediately. He poured a second cup of coffee, carried it over, set it on the small table beside the cot, and stepped back. She was pressed against the wall, the blanket pulled up, both eyes open and watching him with the particular expression of someone who is calculating distances and exits. He sat back down in his chair. "You are safe," he said. "You fell in my barn last night. I did not move anything that was yours." She looked at the coffee. She looked at him. She looked at the door. "Door is not locked," he said. "Never locks. Latch sticks sometimes, but you can shoulder it open." She said nothing. He picked up the piece of leather he had been mending before all this started and went back to work on it. He did not look at her again for a while. He had learned with frightened animals that looking directly was the wrong thing. You let them come to the knowing of you on their own time. After maybe 10 minutes, he heard her pick up the coffee cup. That was enough for now. Her name was Nora. She told him that on the second day, when she was sitting up and had eaten half a bowl of the corn porridge he made, she said it the way a person offers the smallest possible piece of themselves to test if it will be taken badly. He said his name was Eli and went back to what he was doing. She still had not opened her fist. She slept with her hand curled under the blanket, and when she was awake, she kept it at her side, always closed. He noticed it the way he noticed most things, quietly and without comment. On the third day, she asked him where the nearest town was. "Harlan," he said, 14 miles east. Stage comes through on Thursdays." She looked at the window. "What day is it?" "Tuesday." She nodded slowly and said nothing else about it. He did not ask where she was going or where she had come from. He figured she would tell him what he needed to know, or she would not, and either way he would manage. That evening she helped him without being asked, carrying water in from the pump and stacking it near the stove. She moved slowly. Her knees were still bad, but she moved with a kind of deliberate usefulness that told him she was not someone who sat still well when there was work to be done. "You do not have to," he said. "I know," she said. He found out pieces of it the way you find out most things about a person. Not in one telling, but in fragments. Dropped at odd moments, sometimes in the middle of something else entirely. She had been on the stage when it happened. 3 men. They had not been interested in money, or not only in money. She had gone out the window while the stage was still moving, rolled down a hillside into scrub brush, lay there for a long time, then walked. She had walked for 2 days. He did not ask about the 3 men. He did not ask what they had wanted beyond the obvious ugly thing that people want when they stop a stage and look through it for a particular kind of trouble. He had enough of the shape of it. "You got somewhere to be," he said. Not a question, a recognition. "Yes," she said. "Someone waiting." She was quiet for a moment. "I hope so," she said. "I am not certain anymore." He understood that kind of uncertainty, the kind that comes not from not knowing where someone is, but from not knowing what you will find when you get there. He had ridden back to his family's place once, years ago, after a long stretch away, and found the house empty and the windows dark, and a neighbor who told him what had happened in the winter while he was gone. He understood hoping and not being certain. On the 4th night, she opened her hand. She did not make a ceremony of it. He was across the room, already half asleep in the chair, and she simply opened her fingers there in the lamplight and looked at what she had been carrying. He was more awake than she knew. He watched through half-closed eyes. It was a photograph, small, bent at one corner, the kind that creases from being held too much. She looked at it for a long time. Her face did not change in any way that was dramatic, but something in the set of her shoulders changed. Something that had been held went somewhere else. He closed his eyes the rest of the way and let her have that privately. In the morning the photograph was gone again, back into whatever fold of her clothing she kept it in. He did not mention it. She did not offer it. But something had shifted. He was not sure what. He only knew that the quality of the silence in the room was different from what it had been, the way the air changes before rain, without anything visible yet in the sky. She asked him on the 5th day why he lived the way he did. They were outside. He was splitting wood. She was sitting on a fence rail, still moving slowly, but doing better. The morning was cold in the way late spring mornings can be on the frontier, frost still on the ground in the shade, sky that blue that doesn't last past 10. "What way?" he said. "Alone," she said. "Out here, away from everything." He set the axe down and thought about it honestly. He had given dishonest answers to this before, to different people at different times. He did not feel like a dishonest answer today. "I was not good at what people expected," he said, "and I was tired of being bad at it." She looked at him. What did they expect? "To want things," he said. "The things everyone is supposed to want. A bigger piece of land. More cattle. A position. A name." He picked up the axe again. "I found I did not want those things, and people kept waiting for me to start wanting them, and I got tired of disappointing them. So you came here." "So I came here." She was quiet for a moment. The wind moved through the grass on the south side of the fence. "Does it work?" she said. He split the next log cleanly. "Some days," he said. She nodded as though that was an answer she recognized. He had a horse named Cutter, a gray roan who was getting on in years, but still sound, and a mule named August, who was not getting on in years so much as had always seemed ancient, had come to him already old, would probably outlast them all. There were 4 cattle, a small flock of chickens, and a dog of uncertain origin called Pike, who showed up each morning from wherever he spent his nights and left again each evening without ceremony. Nora took to the animals quickly. He noticed she talked to them, not the way people sometimes do as performance, making sounds to seem comfortable, but the way a person talks when they are working through something and the animal is simply what is present. She told Cutter things in a low voice while she brushed him, and Cutter turned one ear back to listen the way horses do when they are genuinely paying attention. He did not listen to what she said. It was not for him, but he noticed that she was different after those conversations. Lighter. Whatever she had set down with the horse, she did not always pick back up. He thought there was something worth knowing in that, about what we carry and where we put it, and whether we have to carry it back when we are done. Thursday came. He hitched August to the small wagon before she was awake, put a blanket in the back for warmth, made cornbread, and wrapped it in cloth for the road. When she came out, he was already sitting up on the seat, reins in hand. She stopped and looked at the wagon. "You don't have to take me," she said. "I know," he said. She looked at him for a moment. Then she went back inside and came out with the small bundle she had put together from the few things she had and climbed up onto the seat beside him. They drove in silence for a while. The land was wide and flat in the early morning, the sky ahead of them pale where the sun was coming. The grass on either side of the track was tall and moving, and the sound of it was the sound of the whole place breathing. "What is in Harlan?" he said after a time. She took a moment. "My brother," she said. "He has a claim there. Or he did. I have not had word from him in 8 months. 8 months is a long time to not have word." "Yes," she said. "He did not say that people go 8 months without sending word for many reasons, and not all of them are bad ones." She knew that already. She had been living with knowing it for 8 months. "What will you do," he said, "if he is gone?" She looked out at the grass. "I do not know," she said. "I have been thinking about that question for 2 days, and I do not have an answer yet." "That is honest," he said. "It is all I have," she said. Harlan was the kind of town that had been growing fast and had not grown gracefully. Buildings that did not quite line up. Streets that had been laid out before anyone agreed on where things should go. A mill that was too big for the town's current size, but had been built for what the town intended to become. There were people, enough of them, and the sound of hammers from 3 different directions. He drove her to the land office, which was where you started when you were looking for someone who had filed a claim. She went inside. He waited with August. She was in there a long time. He watched the street. A man came out of the general store, carrying a crate. 2 boys chased something around the side of a building. A woman in a gray dress stood at the edge of the street looking at a piece of paper, and then at the buildings around her with the expression of someone who cannot make the map match the place. Nora came out. He looked at her face. He had gotten good, over the years, at reading faces in the first second before people arranged them. What he saw in that first second was complicated. Not the worst thing, but not simple either. She climbed back up to the seat. "He is alive," she said. "He had a bad winter. Lost the claim. He is working at the mill now." She paused. "He does not know I am here. He lost my letters, or they never arrived. He has been trying to reach me." Eli nodded. "He is at the mill," she said. He turned August and drove to the mill. He did not go in. He waited outside with August in the wagon and watched a pair of sparrows dispute ownership of a fence post. When Nora came back out, she had a tall young man with her who had her same coloring and a beard he had not had time to grow gracefully and eyes that were red from recent crying, which he was making no attempt to hide. They stopped in front of the wagon. "This is my brother Thomas," Nora said. "Eli Cade. He is the reason I am standing here." Thomas looked at him with the specific directness of a young man who has just been told he owes something very large to someone he has never met and is trying to figure out what the appropriate response is. "I don't know how to thank you," Thomas said. "You don't need to," Eli said. "She walked 2 days," Thomas said. He said it like he was still trying to understand it. "She did," Eli said. "She did not stop." Thomas looked at his sister. Something passed between them that was not for Eli to read. Eli picked up the reins. "Wait," Nora said. He waited. She reached into her clothing and took out the photograph. She looked at it for a moment, then held it out to him. He took it, surprised. It was a photograph of a farmhouse, not a portrait of a person. A house, modest, with a porch, a tree beside it, fields behind it going to the edge of the frame. Someone had written on the back in careful letters, "Home." Before. He looked at it, and then looked at her. "I have been carrying that for 3 years, she said. "Since the fire. I thought if I let go of it something would be lost." She paused. "But I think maybe I have been holding the wrong thing. I was holding the before, not the after." He did not know what to say, so he said nothing. "You can keep it or leave it," she said. "I just did not want to carry it back with me." He looked at the photograph one more time. Then he folded it careful and put it in his shirt pocket. "All right," he said. He drove back alone. The day had gone warm by then, the frost long gone, the sky doing what the sky does on a good spring day, which is simply be a particular shade of blue that seems to have no edge to it. August walked at his own pace, which was not fast but was steady, and Eli did not hurry him. He thought about the photograph in his pocket. He had not thought of himself as someone who was holding onto it before. He had thought of himself as someone who had simply found a way of living and was living it. But sitting alone on the wagon seat, with the sound of the grass and the steady fall of August's feet, he thought about the question Nora had asked. Does it work? Some days. That was the honest answer, and he had given it. But he had not given himself the next part of it. The part where some days it did not work, and those days, he could not have said what was missing exactly, but something was. The part where he had built a life around the absence of things he had told himself he did not want, and sometimes wondered if not wanting them had been a choice, or had been the story he told afterward to explain the choosing. He had let her go without asking a single thing that was for himself. Not her name until she gave it. Not where she had come from. Not what she had been doing on that stage, or where she had been going before things went wrong. Not what was in the photograph until she showed him. He was proud of that, and he also knew it was easy. Being careful with someone is easy when you know they are leaving. The hard part is being careful with someone who might stay. He did not know why he was thinking this. He thought about her voice talking to Cutter, the particular low tone of it, the way Cutter turned his ear. He thought about the quality of the silence in the room after she had opened her hand and looked at the photograph, and he had pretended to sleep. August walked on. 2 weeks passed. He was doing what he always did. Morning work, afternoon work, evening work. The day organized around what needed doing, and nothing else. Pike showing up, going away. The cattle grazing, and the chickens doing what chickens do. Cutter getting older, by degrees too small to see, but adding up. He took the photograph out sometimes in the evening. Looked at the house in it. The tree. The fields. Home. Before. He thought about what comes after. He thought it was interesting that she had written before on the picture, and not the house's name, or the place it was in, or any fact about it. Just that it was a before. As though the whole point was not the house, but the position of it in time. What she had been standing in before the fire, before the stage, before the 2 days of walking, before his barn. He thought a person could spend a whole life facing backward like that, standing in the after, holding a picture of the before, never turning around to see what might be in front of them now. He put the photograph in a small wooden box, where he kept a few things he did not use, but could not put away. Then he went to bed. She came back on a Friday, 6 weeks after he had driven her to Harlan. He was at the pump when he heard the horse. He stood up and looked. She was riding a bay he did not recognize. Sitting it well, coming up the track at an easy pace. She was wearing different clothes from before, still simple but intact, and her hair was back in a braid. The cut at her temple was healed to a thin line. He stood at the pump and waited. She reined in the bay and looked down at him. Thomas is staying at the mill, she said. He is doing well. He has a good situation. Good, Eli said. I told him I needed to come back and get something I left. He waited. She looked at him steadily. She had, he thought, the particular directness of a person who has used up all their patience for being indirect. I left a question unanswered, she said. He thought about it. Does it work? He said. Yes, she said. He looked at the land around him, the barn, the grass going south, the sky doing what it was doing, which was the same thing it always did. I told you, he said. Some days. I know, she said. I am asking if there are more of those days when someone else is here. He was quiet for a long time enough time that Pike appeared from somewhere and sat down beside him and looked up at him with the expression that was the dog's version of well. I don't know, Eli said. I haven't tried it. Neither have I, Nora said, but I would like to. He looked at her on the bay horse in the morning light. He thought about the before in the photograph, and the after that comes after. He thought about a house in a picture and a house you are actually standing in, and how the difference between them is not memory but presence. There's a room off the barn, he said. I used it for storage. It would need work. I can work, she said. I know you can, he said. She got down from the horse. It was not simple, and he would not have said it was. Nothing on the frontier was simple in the way people sometimes talk about it afterward. looking back from some easier place. The land was hard. The winters were hard. The work was constant in a way that did not leave much room for anything that was not work. But there was more to say than that. There was the room off the barn, which they cleared together over 3 days, and which Nora organized in a way that was different from how he would have done it, but worked better. There was the morning she brought Cutter in from the field talking to him in that low voice, and the horse walked steadier than he had in a year. There was the evening Pike stayed instead of leaving, just the once, and laid down near the fire as though he had always done it. There was the question of the photograph. He gave it back to her one evening without preface, just set it on the table where she was sitting. She picked it up and looked at it for a long time. "Where did you find this?" she said. "You gave it to me," he said. "In Harlan, when you left." She looked at him. "I remember," she said. "I thought you would leave it somewhere." "I thought about it," he said. She turned the photograph over and looked at the back. "Home. Before." She set it down on the table and looked out the window at the land in the evening light, the grass moving, the sky going the colors it goes at the end of the day. "I think I would like to cross out the before," she said. He looked at the photograph. "You could write something else," he said. She thought about it. Then she went and found the stub of pencil she kept in her coat and came back. She looked at the photograph a moment. Then she drew a line through before and wrote one word beside it. He looked at what she wrote. "Now." He nodded slowly. "Home. Now." Thomas came out to visit in the fall, riding with a friend from the mill, staying 3 days. He was taller than Eli had remembered, or seemed so, more settled in himself. He had the look of a young man who has come through something difficult and discovered he is capable of more than he thought. On the second evening they sat outside after supper, the 4 of them, the friend whose name was Grant and who said little but listened with apparent interest, and the night coming on with the stars beginning. Thomas looked around at the land. "You built all this yourself," he said to Eli. "Not a question." "Most of it," Eli said. "The barn was here when I came, in worse shape." "It is a good place," Thomas said. Eli looked at it the way you look at something when someone else says a thing about it that is true, and you are hearing it from outside yourself for the first time in a while. "It is," he said. Nora looked at him from across the fire. He looked back at her. There was nothing in that exchange that needed words. It was the kind of thing that happens between 2 people who have spent enough time in the same silence that they have learned to speak in it. Thomas saw it and looked away at the stars, and he was smiling, though he did not make a show of it. The hard winter came that year, the one people in the territory talked about for a long time afterward. It started early and did not stop. 3 weeks of cold so deep the water in the pump froze before you could carry it inside. The cattle huddled. Cutter stood in the barn with his blanket on and his ears back and his breath making small clouds. August appeared entirely unbothered, which was consistent with his character. They worked through it together. There was no other way. There were days when the wind was so bad you could not go from the house to the barn without a rope tied between, something Eli had done before but alone, which was different. Having another person on the other end of the rope changed it. You pulled and there was a pull back. You were not just fighting the cold, you were fighting it with someone, and that was not a small thing. The night the temperature dropped so low it cracked the water barrel. They lay awake in the dark, the fire going as high as they dared, and Nora said, "Tell me something." "What kind of thing?" he said. "Anything," she said. "Something I don't know." He thought for a while. "When I was 17, he said, "I tried to leave home and made it 12 miles before I turned around. I thought I turned around because I was scared. I told myself that for years." He paused. "But I think I turned around because I knew it wasn't time yet. I think sometimes we come back to a place not because we failed to leave it, but because we needed to leave from the right moment, and the right moment hadn't come yet." The fire popped. "Did it come?" she said. "Eventually," he said. She was quiet for a while. "I think about the stage sometimes," she said. "Not the men. The moment before. I was sitting there watching the land go by, and I was thinking that I was tired of moving, that I wanted to stop somewhere and let somewhere catch up to me." She paused. "And then everything happened." "And then you stopped," he said. "In a barn," she said. "In a barn," he said. She laughed quietly. It was the first time he had heard her laugh. It was a low sound, not performed. Real the way real things are when they are not trying to be anything. I suppose that is one way it goes, she said. Most ways are stranger than you expected, he said. In my experience. Spring came. It came the way spring comes after a hard winter, slowly, and then all at once. The ground giving up its frost reluctantly, and then not reluctantly. The grass coming back. The sky doing that thing it does, where you wake up one morning, and it is a different kind of blue than it has been for months, and you know something has turned. Nora planted things in the south field, that spring. Practical things. Things that would grow in the soil and the climate, and feed them through the next winter. But also other things, smaller, less necessary. Things she planted in a row along the fence where they would get the afternoon sun. He did not ask what they were. He watched them come up over the weeks and determined from the leaves that they were flowers, which surprised him and also did not. One afternoon he was watching her work in the field, and he thought about how she had arrived in his barn in the dark, collapsed and clutching something with both hands, having walked 2 days without stopping, and how she was now standing in the south field in the afternoon sun pressing seeds into the earth with careful fingers. He thought about what she had held so tight in the dark that she would not let it go even when she was barely conscious. He had thought for a long time that the photograph was the answer to that, the held thing, the carried thing. But standing there watching her in the spring field, he thought that was not quite right. The photograph was only a symbol of it. What she had actually held, what she had carried through the dark and the cold and the 2 days of walking, was something harder to name, something that does not have a simple word. It was the belief that there was something worth getting to. That was what she had held. Not just hope, which is sometimes passive, a wish. This was different. This was the decision, made again every step for 2 days, that the after was worth the cost of getting there. That what was in front of her mattered enough to move toward it even when moving hurt. He thought you could not carry that for someone else. You could hold a door. You could keep a fire going. You could make coffee and say the door is not locked and step back. But the held thing, the real held thing, had to come from inside the person carrying it. No one could give it to them. She had come into his barn carrying something he could not have given her. He had just given her a place to hold it until morning. It was August when she found the box. She was not snooping. She was reorganizing a shelf, and the box was there with the other things he kept, and she moved it, and it rattled, and she set it down somewhere else, and went on with what she was doing. But later that evening, he noticed she was looking at the shelf. "You can open it," he said. She looked at him. "It's private." "It's just the things I don't use but can't put away," he said. "Nothing in there is private. It's just objects." She opened it. He watched her look through the contents. A button from a coat that had belonged to his father. A coin from a country he had never been to, found in a field. A piece of a letter he had never finished writing. A small bird carved from wood that someone had left in a barn he had slept in once, years ago, and that he had put in his pocket without quite deciding to. She picked each thing up and looked at it and set it down. Then she found the photograph. She looked at it, at both sides, at the crossed-out word and the new one. She looked at it for a long time. "You kept it in here," she said. "I told you I would keep it or leave it," he said. "I kept it." She set it down. Then she picked up the small carved bird and looked at it. "Where did this come from?" she said. "Don't know," he said. "Someone made it and left it and I found it. It seemed wrong to leave it." She set it back in the box. Then she took the photograph and set it in there too. She looked at him. "I would like to put something in there," she said. He nodded. She went to her coat and came back with something small. He saw what it was when she set it in the box. A small flat stone, dark gray, with a stripe of white quartz through it. "I found it the first day I walked," she said. "On the ground. I picked it up and put it in my pocket, and I don't know why. I just wanted to hold something that was solid." He looked at the stone. "It worked," she said. "I mean, here I am." She looked at the box. "I don't need to carry it anymore, but I don't want to lose it." He closed the box. "Then we won't," he said. "The moral of a story is sometimes the thing the writer puts in at the end like a bow on a package, neat and deliberate, telling you what to take away. But the truest thing a story can show you is something that does not need to be said at the end because it has been happening all along, in the small moments, the ones that seem unremarkable until you see them together. Eli Cade had built a life around the idea that wanting less was the same as needing less. He had confused independence with isolation and called it peace. He had called the choosing of loneliness a preference, and had lived in that preference long enough that he had stopped questioning it. Nora had walked 2 days through the dark, holding something solid in her fist, because she had decided before she started walking that there was something worth arriving at. She had not known what it was. She had not known that it was a barn on the frontier or a man who sat across the room and let her come to the knowing of him on her own time. She had only known that the arriving mattered, and so the walking had to happen. One step and then the next, for as long as it took. What they gave each other was not rescue. Rescue is when someone lifts you out of something and carries you to safety, which is a fine thing, but is temporary, because the person who is carried has not learned to carry themselves. What they gave each other was something different. It was the particular gift of being seen clearly and not found wanting, of being met in a difficult place and not asked to be other than you were. The box on the shelf held a button and a coin and an unfinished letter and a small carved bird and a photograph and a flat gray stone with a stripe of white through it. None of those things were valuable. None of them did anything. They were just the record of a life, the proof that it had been lived in contact with the world, that things had been found and held and kept because they mattered to someone. The truest things, it turns out, are often not the big declarative ones. They are the small held ones, the ones you carry through the dark, the ones you set down carefully when you finally have somewhere safe to set them, the ones you do not leave behind when you go, but do not need to grip anymore either. The door to the barn still stuck on the latch and needed a shoulder to open it. Neither of them ever fixed it. There are some things you leave the way they are, because the way they are is how they let you in.